Welcome to the Navigating Disruption podcast. I'm your host, Shaquille Barmel. I'm the CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and partner with the Summit Group. I'm a coach, consultant, and speaker, and I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals make an impact through improved performance. In this podcast, I share insights and interviews with interesting leaders to define practical lessons that you can use to make an impact in the face of uncertainty. We are proud to be brought to you by the Summit Group. We help companies increase revenue and deepen customer relationships by moving from sales excellence to authentic business relevance through engaging learning experiences. When we were children, Egan Christensen was my best friend. But then at 11 years old, he just disappeared. Now, I'm not embarrassed to say that at the time, I was a little brokenhearted. There was no easy way to stay connected in the early 80s, so we lost touch. In this conversation, we catch up after exactly 40 years. We reminisce, of course, but then we discover how much we have in common in our approach to leadership, customer relationships, and business. He has had an incredible career in sales, service, and strategy in global technology companies. It makes sense now why those childhood memories have stuck with both of us all these years. Although we didn't realize it at the time, we shared values. This is one of my best examples of how influences and experiences early in life can carry through into our leadership. Enjoy the conversation. Egan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Shaquille. Good to be with you today.
Really, really good to be with you. And I'll have to tell you that this is a bit of a milestone moment for this podcast because you are basically the guest I've had on that I go furthest back with.
Wow.
So I have not, until I interview my dad or my brother, you are the person that I've known the longest. Despite years of being disconnected, you are the person I've known the longest on here. Going back to grade 5. I think.
It's a long time, man. It's hard to believe that it's been that long. I remember those days very well, and they're part of my golden history. And I look back on them with a lot of fondness and super happy we're able to reconnect. So I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, me too. For our listeners, here's what I want them to picture is take the young boys in Stand By Me, the movie, and the young boys in It's a Netflix Stranger Things.
There you go.
So that was us. So the kids from Stand By Me and those adventures, and then the kids from Stranger Things, minus the dead body and the railroad tracks. Oh, we probably did hang out on the railroad tracks.
I'm pretty sure there were some railroads involved somewhere along the way.
And the parallel dystopia universe. Minus those things, that was our life. That was our life in the 80s.
Well, Burnaby, right? It's bound. Yeah. Those things are bound to come up when you talk about
Absolutely.
That
we lived for our bicycles.
Yeah.
And for summers and for apple picking and going through the trails and doing all sorts of things. And as we got older, getting into more and more trouble, but it was a good time.
I remember our rides to New Westminster. And I mean, our parents had no idea how far away from home we were really going on our bikes and how much territory we covered. And I remember all of us, it was just be home by dinner time. That was really the rule. Yeah, no cell phones to track us, no way to find out what we were up to. Yeah. Parents were all working and busy. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
It was a different time. Felt like in some ways it was much more innocent. And the definition of getting in trouble in those days, which was a big deal, is nothing compared to getting in trouble in these days. But boy, we had it good. I often think about my boys as they were younger, and you have girls, about in some ways I felt bad they're missing out from all that. I remember one time I was standing on my front porch in New Westminster. My kids were probably, 6 and 9, and they were out on their bicycles and they were just going down to the end of the street, and I was like, the alarm bells were going off if they were out of my sight. If they got to the end of the street behind that tree and I couldn't see them anymore, that was a problem. And I'm thinking, man, nobody knew where we were. We'd wake up in the morning, get on our bikes, and we'd be gone, and we'd have adventures all day.
Absolutely. And now with even my own girls, and they're 17 and 23 now.
Yeah.
Or 22, about to be 23. And I have phone tracker on them. Even to this day, I know where my girls are at any moment. The moment they got a cell phone, they got it. And even now, my 22-year-old has not said anything. But, I told them outright, if you want the phone, I'm leaving it on. I just want to know where you're at. And it's not that I don't trust them, right?
Yeah.
It's just that as a parent, I want to be there for them. And it's a stranger world now than it was back then. And maybe we're just more aware, or we get to see more of it. But certainly it's a different time than it was 40 years ago now.
Just so that we're not too hard on ourselves, because I don't think I'd change anything. If our parents had that technology available, they probably would have done the same thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So without a doubt.
So let's set that aside, make us feel better that we're still good parents and our kids are okay.
Right.
And let's dive in. So Egan, I go back and forth in these conversations into history, into the future. So since we've just dived into history a little bit, I will go back there because I do want to connect with you. You spent most of your career in technology. How would you describe your career and most of the time you've been working?
First off, I think I've been lucky. That's probably one of the biggest things. Yeah, it required attitude and aptitude and aggressiveness to get what I want. I actually started my career more so in the construction industry, oddly enough. My dad was into mining, and so we traveled all over the world because of that. And that's why we ended up leaving Burnaby, and my dad bought a gold mine down in Arizona, and I went to high school and college down in Arizona after we left. So I spent a lot of time working for my dad on the mine, and I'll give my dad a ton of credit. He had a fortitude and an attitude and a work ethic like I'd never seen. The man was just always dedicated to finding that next thing. He was an entrepreneur, and so I blame him for my entrepreneurialism that I have today, because I love getting into new things and helping people define what they're going to do. And what I also found out during that process that I was really into technology. And so I started building computers when I got to Arizona. In fact, when we left Arizona, I met a guy up in Seattle who gave me my first Commodore 64. And I was talking about how to program video games and all stuff that, it was Pac-Man at that point and asteroids. And I'm talking about 3D driving games. And this guy looked at me and goes, "Wow, you need a computer here," and handed it to me as we walked out the door. And that kind of set the tone for me. And so even when I got into construction, so after college, I went to work for my dad, and we worked for a small steel company, and we did projects for Lockheed and NASA. We were building these large trailers for them to work on missiles, and ton of fun. I got to know the program managers at Lockheed. They took me under their arm, showed me stuff that I'm certain I wasn't supposed to see, got to present to generals, got flown to Guam. It was an amazing kind of lesson out. And so it was more construction related kind of stuff. We were building something. So then after that, I ended up going to work for a small underground contractor, and he did water, sewer, and storm. And so we did big housing developments. And I was a project manager, estimator. Part of the time, my job was to take the inspector out and get him drunk at lunch so we could get our jobs done in a fast way.
Different times.
Absolutely different times. And then one day I woke up and said, I don't like leaving the house at 5 a.m. I really love technology. I'd like to find a way to get into a tech firm, because it was booming at that point. And my mom actually connected me with a recruiter, a headhunter, who they were looking for a project manager for a business process reengineering program over at Hitachi Data System, which is now Hitachi Ventana. So I got brought in, and I interviewed with the VP of sales and the VP of training and the VP of development and the CTO for the company. And immediately they said, well, you don't have the tech background, but you certainly have the project skills, and clearly you have computer skills. Come on over. And so they took me into their wing. And it was a fantastic lesson. EDS was our in-house IT organization at that time. And so my job just kind of changed. I ran the program management for kind of the PMO office for this business process reengineering effort. Somewhere along the way, EDS figured out that there was a bunch of technology, and Hitachi Data Systems, and I don't know how many people know this, was actually formed by Hitachi or EDS reaching out to Hitachi and saying, we'd like to resell your mainframes and your storage systems. And so they bought National Semiconductor and merged all the folks from that company. And they brought in executives from EDS to lead the organization. About half were EDS, the other half were Hitachi people. And HDS was born at that point. So when I got in there, it was raw. They were still doing email on mainframe Spire servers, green screens. And it was 89, it was 90, right? So when it was 89, 90. So 92. Apologize. So I kind of took over on all sorts of different efforts after that. I got swallowed in by the HR. Actually, I went to work for the VP of Training Development, and I did CIO and CFO conferences on the value of storage and why it was important. So I learned my speaking chops to the C-levels during that time. And then I ended up getting offered a job over in the HR department running their HRS systems, and took over managing the EDS team and ran a global HR system into 126 different countries and managed the whole rollout. And then I got a call from the CEO asking me that if I wanted to take over as director of IT, running all the IT systems inside of the company. So I ended up running over and joining the IT organization, and deployed 3 different versions of Oracle worldwide, ran 600-person multi-team effort, outside consultants. So that's where I really got my technology chops.
Yeah, wow. And that's how I think of you, because when I first found you, I can't remember if it was Facebook or LinkedIn. That's what I remember noticing, because I had been spending some time working in Salesforce effectiveness and CRM systems. And I remember there were some parallels to what you were doing at the time, but that's how I thought of you as technology. I had no idea that you had a previous career in construction. So that's a major pivot. And you describe it now like it was nothing. It was really easy, and you're giving a lot of credit to a lot of people that kind of gave you a shot at it. But what was going on for you at that point at which you said, okay, I don't want to leave the house at 5 a.m. anymore? What was it? How did you feel making that transition? Were you excited? Were you nervous? Were you confident? What were you thinking?
Again, I'll go back to, I was lucky. The headhunter that my mom connected me with, she worked for a precision sheet metal company that built chassis and containers for applied materials and all sorts of different stuff. And so they got hiring all the time through this headhunter. And when we connected, he brought me in and goes, your resume is fantastic. Your experience is fantastic. Let me go put you out in front of some folks and we'll see what happens. And it was the first interview, and they hired me right after the first interview. So my nervousness was a little bit there. I knew I could stay in the job I had. So it wasn't that I was out of a job. I just knew it was time for me to do something different. Yeah. And I knew I could see at that point how technology was really booming. And I knew that's where ultimately I wanted to be and where I wanted to play, because I love technology. I love getting in front of it and understanding it. I love working with customers on making that, plan and action come to fruition. I'm a logical thinker, right? I'm a A to Z kind of mindset. And, the first thing I'll do is they start talking about what they want to do. I go to the board and start writing out a process. And that's really helped me through all my career. And I'll lean back on my construction side, because everything was so regimented, right? If you didn't get the sand ordered or the pavement ordered, materials ordered, you had a crew standing there that would do nothing. That was costing me, and they were union guys, $140, $160 an hour, right? For these guys, it was big money. And so you really got into that logical thought process. And so the technology side, I just knew that I had to find a way over there, and that, I had enough experience I could get in. So was I nervous? Sure. Yeah. But I knew I was done in construction. And so I wanted to find something else. And this opportunity just worked out to be a fantastic opportunity.
Well, it's so interesting. You're describing this as being in the 90s, right? If I take us to present day right now, there are a ton of people that are in industries that are being displaced by technology. I mean, it feels like that's been going on for years anyway. So much more now. And there's a lot of people that are struggling with that transition from kind of working with their hands, labor, building things physically, or doing jobs in offices that are being now made redundant because of technology and AI and all those things. What would be your advice to people like that are feeling a bit overwhelmed or worried about transitions?
It's a great question. And certainly I agree with you. There's certainly a lot of displacement going on. If you're interested in technology and you think you have an aptitude or an attitude for it, there's some great programs you can sign up for. Google has one where you can go out and become a certified help desk person really quickly. It doesn't take too long to go through that process, and you can go through and kind of check it out for yourself. I think what you have to do is, and then, it's an old cliche, right? You do what you love. And I was always a tech geek in the background, building computers and running programs and trying to figure out how to make an Excel spreadsheet, do this or that. And so that drove me to kind of want and do more within the technology side of it. So you got to lean into your passion a little bit. Certainly the job market is changing right now, but at the same time, the opportunities are abound. And there's definitely a ton of opportunity, a ton of work. companies like Amazon, Google have so many different types of roles, whether it's communications or coding or customer support or fulfillment or delivery, right? There's ways and mediums in which you can move yourself into any one of those organizations. And I'm not limiting to them by any means. There's lots of other companies out there that are offering different things. And there's a ton of startups right now that are looking for new, fresh blood, that are trying to find people who have a different background, because that diversity, that difference in style and approach helps. And the other side is really work on your communications. One of the things I always called myself, I was the geek interpreter for a long time. I could take techno jumbo talk and bring it back up to my leadership and make them understand it. And one of my past leaders, his name was Mike Menegay, great guy, retired now on a couple of boards, super good guy. One of the things he told me a long time ago was, when you present to an executive, only present in 3 crayon colors and don't change those crayon colors, right?
Yeah.
Keep it simple, hit to the point, certainly have backup and be able to get to the details if you need to get to your details, but at the same time, present at that high level. And so that's the same thing when you're communicating about what you want, what you're looking for. It's about finding something that you'll be excited and have passion doing, because if you love what you're doing, then it's not work. And it's great if you can get paid for it at the same time.
You know, Egan, what you just said there, I think is so underplayed, the importance of being able to articulate a message in simple terms that your audience can understand. I was just, there's so much going on, obviously virtually now, and I was on a week full of some of these Zoom calls, and the number of presentations where the slide is dense, there's a lot of text, and you're like trying to read it but listen to people at the same time. It's still a skill that people need to focus on developing, is keeping it simple, telling a story, inspiring people. I love the 3 crayon colors. That's a gift of a piece of advice for sure.
It was.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Now, and I've used it so many times in my career, whether I'm presenting to the second in command at Dell about what the SaaS and cloud strategy was going to be and how we were going to get there.
Yeah.
And I'd done my homework. So it's not like I didn't come in. I had spreadsheets and forecasts and headcount requirements based on a $100 million growth plan that they put in front of me, when ultimately I got handed all cloud and SaaS when I was at Dell. And I took that and basically condensed it, built all the work, built all the detail slides, and then went, okay, how do I summarize 40 slides of deep, gut-wrenching information and pull that up into 3 or 5 slides that's going to help an executive go, oh, this is what you're trying to get done.
Right.
And what was great about that is that it allowed me to present the highest details. And then I would have, our CFO he wanted to see the details. Well, how are we going to do that? What's your staff plan look like? How are you going to model that out? What kind of revenue do you think you're going to see? What segments do you think you're going to touch? What markets will you be in? How are you going to deal with these types of issues? And I would just go, oh, hold on, let me jump to that slide. And I would roll back over. And what it did is it really kind of squashed things. The other thing I learned at Hitachi, which I think is and I got some great lessons in that in my first part of my technical career. There's a word in Japanese called nimawashi. Okay. And what it means is to pre-screen or pre-tell something that you're going to present to somebody before they present it.
Yeah.
And this has become my virtue, because whenever I have a leadership meeting, I always call the leader I'm going to meet with beforehand or send an email with, here are the things I'm going to be touching on today. And what it does is that kind of gives you a landing pad already. It gives you a place for you to bring that story down. You've already got the buy-in, and I can't do it to every person that's in the meeting, but I'll do it to the key people in that meeting, right? And what it did for me is that it allowed me to come in and basically, if they had thoughts or questions, I would be able to get those off the table immediately. And if I could get their buy-in, they became a proponent in that meeting for whatever action I needed to do. And that's a virtue that I continue to use on a daily basis now, about what do I want to accomplish, who do I need to know what I want to accomplish, and how do I communicate that way in a very short, effective way so that they see the future.
Also brilliant advice. And that hasn't come up in any of my conversations, but it's such powerful advice. I use that a lot in management consulting when you're working with clients, is you make sure you've got your 30-page PowerPoint deck, but you know which are the 5 slides, but you go to the senior members of the management team one by one and you walk them through it. And the other thing it does, besides the benefits you defined of getting them some questions dealt with and getting them on side, sometimes they will tell you something else, another piece of information, another insight. And then if you can reflect that insight into the document or into the presentation when you're delivering it, that it actually gets them even more bought in, because they said, oh, they listened. They listened to what I said, and now it makes even more sense to me. And they go from buying in to actually becoming your champion because they see themselves in your recommendation. That's good piece of advice.
You're spot on. And then that's happened many times. In fact, when I was at VMware for 2.5 years, and one of my jobs was to sit and I would be the main presenter for our professional services strategy. And I was always the last to bat, right? I was always the last guy on the list. It was usually me between dinner or drinks or whatever they were trying to do for whoever had flown in for these meetings. And what I found is I would show up to the meeting a lot earlier than when I had to present. A lot of people would just show up for their section, present their section, walk out of the room, and then the next thing would happen. I would show up at least half day to a day before my turn, depending on how long that meeting was, for exactly the reason you just said. I wanted to hear their challenges, their problems, their issues, what they were trying to resolve, what their business strategies were, what their IT strategy was related to that business strategy. Because then when I got up to present our professional services strategy, I was able to actually go back and talk, specifically to what they had said. And I was listening, I was taking notes as they were talking. And then I was able to bring that back into my deck. So even though the deck most of the time wasn't customized for that customer, occasionally, most of the time it wasn't. It was a pretty standard deck. I would still talk to it in their language, their terminology, and it made a much deeper connection with the customer and resulted in a lot more opportunities for us.
Yeah, it really does come down to those simple things. Speak in their language, speak in terms they understand, use their words, right? Become the great explainer. Really, really awesome piece of advice for people to drill down on. I'm going to go back in time for a little bit here, because one of the things I want to talk about is kind of leadership, and you've had to lead people. Here's my setup. First of all, before I go into that, I feel the need to, I've been carrying something for the last 40 years, and I need to kind of get it out, and I need to apologize for you. I'll apologize to you for something. You were going, I don't know, we were probably 10. You were going on vacation with your family. You had a job cleaning up the parking lot for the dentist office that was right next to your house. You were going on vacation. You asked me to cover for you one Thursday. I slept in. I didn't go clean the parking lot. And I think you got fired from that job. I'm just really sorry again. I'm glad everything turned out okay. You've had a great career, but I'm really sorry for getting you fired from that first job cleaning the parking lot.
Well, if I remember correctly, I kind of hated that job anyway, so it was all good. As kids, right, we were all looking for find ways to pay for our chips and our soda and runaround money. And
I still remember it was $5. You were going to you were going to give me your $5 for cleaning the parking lot that day. Yeah. So I blew the $5. That's not what bothers me. It bothers me that I let you down. And so anyway, I'm sorry, because I've been carrying that around a long time. Because then you moved away. You moved away, so I couldn't make it up to you. So
I've forgotten and under the bridge. It's all good, my friend. But I sincerely appreciate the thought and the concern. You can let it go. It's all good.
I feel better now. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
So,
good.
One of the things I remember about your dad, which you alluded to earlier, is that he was a man's man. Like, he was stoic, didn't say a lot of words, but just made you feel protected when you were around him, right?
Yeah.
But he traveled a lot, right? He was at mines. And so a lot of the time he was away. I remember when he would come home, but a lot of time he'd always bring you something from the mine, which is cool. I remember one piece of stone he brought you from one of the mines. He was traveling a lot, and your mom, your two sisters, lovely people. I used to spend a lot of time at your place, and your dogs. So if I think about hardcore industries, construction, even technology, quite male dominated around the times that you were coming up.
Yeah.
But you grew up in a house full of women.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on how that affected your leadership and how it came out in your leadership to have kind of both sides represented?
It's a good question. That's actually a great question. And I've been asked this a few times, and I think I have much more empathy and understanding for women and diversity in business because of it. It's always important to me that everybody's opinion is valued no matter who you are. I don't care if you're pink, yellow, green, white, blue, orange, doesn't matter to me. Your race, your sex, your adhesion to sexuality, doesn't matter, right? People are people and they all have value. and intrinsic ways of bringing something to the table. And that diversity makes us all stronger. And what I don't know, you may know. And because of your life experience, it may be different than mine. So I truly look at everybody as equal. I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I think I'm smart. I do believe that I am, but I don't think I'm smarter than you. My smarts are different and are evolved differently because of it. And so I think my mom and both my sisters gave me a good mentality of how to treat people, how to treat women, how to work with women and others within the organization. But yeah, it definitely shaped me in a different way than I think others have been over the years.
Yeah, well, most of the people that I've interviewed, and I know I've been relatively okay with it, but it's something that people figure out in their leadership that actually the soft stuff is actually the hard stuff. For most people, like realizing that the empathy, the listening, the getting buy-in actually is much more important than they realized before starting their career. I think you were set up well because of your early childhood experiences with your family to be ready for that.
Yeah, and it's helped me a few times. I remember when I was at HCS, I had a woman that worked for me, and she got passed over for a promotion. She was very upset and went into the room and cried. And I went in and I sat with her, and I got teary, right? Because I felt her pain, and it wasn't a job within my group, so I couldn't control the promotion that went out. But that alone, she was like, you are the best, because I was there. I listened. I didn't try to, mansplain it or fix it, right? Yeah. It was really about just being there for that person who was clearly upset and in pain over it. And I don't know other managers who have done that. And I'm not trying to make myself sound better than I am, flawed without a doubt, like everybody is. It does allow me to have a good communication. And I like that rapport. That rapport has also been mistaken as I'm being flirtatious or, and no, I'm very respectful of boundaries and making sure that those boundaries are kept. And you hear a lot of that craziness going on in the news right now. Yeah. It's sad to see. But at the same time, there's an old school way and a new school way, and you'll have to adapt your style and strategies through that. But yeah, women and everybody within the organization has a ton of value, and I look forward to working with a ton more of them over the years, because it's amazing what they can bring to the table.
Well, I interviewed a leader a couple of weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago, and one of the things he talked about was the importance of, he discovered the most important thing in leadership is to care. And he basically described it as there's sometimes that people just need you to sit with them, right? And give them a hug and hold them, figuratively. But there's other times that caring actually means kicking them in the butt, because they're not doing all that they're capable of doing, right? Yeah. And so that's something that is really important, the ability to swing both ways. So that's great that you've learned that. Well, I hope that your mom and your sisters will listen to this. I know your dad has passed. If your mom and your sister will listen to it, they're listening to it now. I just want to say thank you to them, because they really took me in, treated me really well. And one demonstration, I'll say, back in those days, I was one of the very few ethnic kids around. And you brought me in and you shared your traditions with me. And I had Christmas dinner with you because we didn't celebrate Christmas, and went on family picnics. And so I'll thank the wonderful women in the Christensen family for having that influence on me. I think you were only around for a couple of years, right? Because grade 5 and grade 6, we were together.
Yeah, I came in the end of 4th. So 4th, 5th, and 6th is when I was in Burnaby. But I think you and I started class together in the 5th grade.
In the 5th grade.
Yeah, so I was there for 3.5 years, and then we moved over to North Vancouver. And then my grandmother was ill, and so we moved near Granville Island. And I still ended up taking a bus from Granville Island area all the way across to North Van to go to school, because I didn't want to change schools yet one more time. And then my 9th grade, we moved to Arizona.
Yeah, because we lost complete touch. But those 2 short years, I've carried the memories of our times together like all this time, just from those 2 short years. So a big part of that time in my life was you and your family. So lots of thanks and gratitude for that.
Yeah, we took Christmas seriously. So
you did.
It was definitely an event at our house, and I've been lucky to have a lot of friends over the years that don't celebrate Christmas who have got to come spend it. And luckily, they've all said the same thing. It's a special time in the Christensen house when we did that, and I certainly miss those times with my folks and my sisters. Try to relay the same spirit now as I've gotten older. Fantastic. My own family.
So, Egan, where are you now in your plans for the future? I know myself, I've pivoted a number of times myself in my career and always reflecting on what I want to do. Where are you now in your career? I guess we're about the same age.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about now for your future?
No, it's a good question. I left VMware a couple of years ago and I just became a consultant. I've been working for McKinsey and a few other firms. And so I'm kind of hired gun that gets brought in based on projects. So I work on sales, channel, services strategies, headcount plans, go-to-market events and strategies, how to work with channel and channel organizations, setting up the right processes. You know, at the end of the day, where I'm at now, it's a good question. I'm enjoying the consulting side of it. I am looking around right now. I might join. I'm interviewing with about 3 different firms. Okay. I won't mention who they are at this moment, but and they're all different kind of roles. Biz dev, services strategy, services for specific customers, kind of architect roles. As I really miss kind of getting in front of customers. Right now I'm working for the company doing these things, and I miss getting out in front of being in front of customers. Someone asked me a long time ago, when you're having a bad day, what do you like to do? And my first answer is go see a customer. Yeah. And the reason is that you can be dealing with all the minutia of stuff in your daily life and business. But when you get to a customer, you get to kind of hear their problems and hear their pains and figure out what they do and how you can help them do it better or improve whatever situation. And so it's always a place of comfort for me, even though it can be a challenge and customers can be upset or not happy or spread thin or dealing with their own problems of the world. But you can come in, and if you've got the right, balance and the right relationship, you can have a really good, meaningful conversation. And so building that rapport and developing those relationships as part of that is important. And being able to get back and sit in front of a customer is really key. And I miss doing that. Even though right now my customers are the clients I'm working for, I want to get out there and spend more time with them. And so that's why I've decided to start looking around a little bit and see what opportunities are out there for me.
So let's chat a little bit about that, because I think we align quite a bit on customer relationships, and you probably come to it very naturally. But I wonder if you could dissect a little bit. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 things in today's world to be really good at serving customers? Your B2B, I assume you're talking about business customers. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 skills, behaviors that are needed now to serve customers well?
It's a good question. First off, and I think we've said it before, which is you need to listen and really understand what's going on. My approach when I work with a customer is I will ask questions until they are uncomfortable answering questions. And it's hard because there's times where I asked everything, but there's lots of ways to look at how you're going to break down the business. And so if you're trying to define what their software development lifecycle looks like, or what a DevOps lifecycle looks like, or you're trying to figure out what their cloud strategy is going to be, or you're trying to figure out what their business objectives are for realigning their organization, or if they're trying to go to an all cloud kind of situation, whatever it might be, right? The more you can dig into those and understand that, it's going to help. So listen, be extremely inquisitive. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If they get uncomfortable with the question, ask why. And if it comes to a point where they've said, okay, I think I've answered enough questions, that's okay, right? And at the end of the day, the reason is that you want to be able to kind of understand. The second thing is take copious notes when you are talking to people. And that's a hard thing to do, right? You want to keep the eye contact and relationship going, but at the same time, you really want to be scribing it down. And so I'll capture bullets, right? Because I don't have to, verbatimly write down everything they said, but I get the key kind of instance of that bullet. And at the end of it, I'll actually go, okay, so now that we've talked, here are some things I've heard from you, right? How does this now align to your current business strategy? The other thing is ask the individual you're working with how they are measured for success, right? If you know what makes them successful, how their managers are looking at their job, then ultimately you can come in and actually help them be more successful in their role.
Absolutely.
And so that win-win scenario starts to build, we talked about it earlier, that core understanding of what they do, empathy to the situation that they're in, the inquisitive side of understanding what's going on in their business. But understanding their success helps you frame what you're going to deliver that meets their objective and meets their needs. So if they're measured on either results, financial savings, program launches at a specific time, increase of productivity, less customer issues or support issues, whatever it is, right? You can then align your pitch to align to their needs.
Love
The
it.
second question I always ask is, how is your boss measured? Right? And because everyone reports to somebody eventually, or unless you're dealing directly with the CEO, and even the CEO reports to a board. So they're not immune to the same conversation point. But understanding how their boss is successful and how do you build that rapport and that relationship to get up to their boss? Because ultimately, you may be dealing with a manager or a director, but they're going to have to take their plan and their presentation and get it off to a senior director or a VP or a C-level within the organization. And so by understanding that success factor, it helps you position better. The last thing is work up the chain as quick as you can. Ask for that meeting with their leadership team, right? Gain their trust, figure out what it is this individual needs, and then say, great, can we go ahead and let's have a conversation with your VP? I'd love to, or director, or whoever they report into. I would love to go through this with them and just make sure that we've captured everything you think is there. Let them vet it, see it first, this way they understand it, and then get that scale up. And working your way up the chain really helps you position your value, allows you to become that trusted advisor within the organization.
Absolutely.
And starts to build a rapport. The other thing is,
can I pause you there for a second? I want to ask you something, because a lot of business development and salespeople are uncomfortable trying to get higher up the chain because their major obstacle is they don't want to alienate their customer by going up the chain.
Right.
How do you think about it, and how do you get around that?
My feeling is it's not an alienation, because you're understanding the success of that individual, and their manager has to have some level of a success. And you understand how important this project is to their leader. If the project is not important to the leader, don't waste your time going up the scale. This manager or person you're dealing with is going to be able to raise it up. But if it's important for you or for that person and their boss's boss, there's no reason you shouldn't go up the chain, right? Because you're going to bring value to the statement. You're going to build that comfort level. And when it's time to get that PO signed, or time to get the project started, or have a project sponsor who's going to be behind what you're doing, you want them engaged, you want them on board on it. The other side is when you build that deck or that presentation, leave a few things wrong. And the reason I say that is, and I do it a little knowingly, is I want a reason to come back. I want a reason to engage again. I want a reason for them to feel like they've added value to the process. And so I don't want to call it a trick, but it's a little bit of a trick, right? Where you can get them more engaged to be helpful. And so when I'm building a deck, a lot of times I'll bring my key stakeholder in and go, okay, here's what I've got. Boom, boom, boom. We'll go through it, and I'll leave the deck a little raw, or I'll show it to them in more of a raw state. And then say, how would you make this better? What things would, and suddenly they get input into it. Now it's not your deck, it's our deck, right? It's our way of improving that pitch or that presentation to the customer. And then when you get up to the executive level, make sure that you understand what they want and what they need out of this, and what the objective is, and how they like to be communicated to, right?
I love it.
One thing, even through the hiring process today, one of my answers when I'm going through an interview is, how do I communicate with you? What's the best way for you and I to talk to each other? Are you overwhelmed? Does email work, or does it get lost in the minutia? I know at Dell, I got 600 emails a day. I couldn't see all my emails. I didn't have time to go through every email. Is it a text message? Is it smoke signals? What is it that you need?
Just on their terms, back to that
on their
thing.
terms,
Yeah.
And it allows you to communicate. The other side is build a rapport with whoever you're working with, right? Don't just make it work. Ask about their family. What did you do this weekend? What hobbies do they have? Take a couple of notes so that you just jog your memory, so the next time you're talking, you can say, oh, you guys were going to go skiing last weekend. How was your trip? Right? If you care about them and you care about their happiness and their success, suddenly you're a good guy and they want to be part of it. You're building rapport. You're building a relationship, right?
Plus you care. Like, you actually do care, right?
I care, yeah.
Like everything you've described, here's the 3 words I carry in my head when it comes to being really good at business development or relationship managers. You got to be curious, which you've just articulated. You have to be relevant. That's how are you measured? What's success look like for you, right?
Yep.
And you got to be authentic. You got to be a real human being, a real person that comes with flaws. But if you're combined with authenticity and curiosity and relevance, that's a pretty good combination. I think I checked the boxes as you were describing that. And that's basically your operating model.
Yep, and I think you hit them all. The only thing I'd add in there, and you said it earlier, is empathy, right?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
ability to understand and that alignment. But yeah, it makes for a great way to kind of build rapport, build that conversation. So I'm never afraid to ask for an up-level meeting. If the manager has an issue with it that you're dealing with, well, then you haven't built that rapport yet. You're asking too early, right? Time it. You want to make sure that you're understanding their momentum, what their timeline is, when this needs to be done by. Knowing those barriers also can tell you how much effort you're going to have to put into it.
Well, Egan, you know that I spend a lot of time doing sales training, sales development, and the organization I work with has done a lot of research into what do the best do. And I'll tell you that based on the way you've described the way you work, you may already know this, but you're in that top 7%. Really only 7% of salespeople know how to combine authenticity, relevance, and curiosity in a way that's really powerful. And I'd put you in that. So just based on hearing how you think about it. So kudos. I think wherever you go, I think it's about deciding where you want to go, but I think you'll be an asset to whichever organization decides that they want to take you on. Watch out for them. Awesome.
Appreciate that very much. Very kind of you to say.
Yeah, no. And so you've given my listeners a lot of amazing advice. The tricky part for me is I do a little summary at the end of this. That's going to be tricky because I like to keep it simple in 3 colors of crayon, three things. So I'm going to have to figure that out, but that's okay. That'll be the fun part. If there's one piece of advice you want to offer leaders right now, you've obviously led people and we're going to some pretty uncertain times. What would be the one piece of advice you'd give leaders right now?
Listen to your teams, understand where they're at, both on the business side, personally, emotionally, physically. This COVID time has been tough on a lot of people in different ways. I work remotely. I've always worked, I've worked remotely for many years now. And so for me, the biggest change was I'm not flying all over the place. I'm not heading off to go see a customer. I'm not taking people out to dinners or lunches or that type of thing. And I miss it. I miss that interpersonal contact. And even though Zoom has been, and these types of calls have been great, and it's great to see people's faces and get that connection, it's a difference between spending some quality time together and getting in front of somebody. So I know that'll come back. I don't think it'll ever be the same as what it was. So I think from a leader's perspective, truly understanding where your team is at, what keeps them motivated, set up some social times with your team. I think just connecting more with your teams. And it's hard because a lot of times you're on a call and you've got 30 things to get done on that call where you're trying to get statuses and whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? And so everybody's only got 5 minutes or 3 minutes to talk about what are they up to and what challenges do they have and what things do they need to go through. Finding a way to pull that out and to get more that personal time with them and get that engagement and show your loyalty to them is super important. Have that empathy and just listen. People want to feel respected. They want to feel wanted. They want to feel as part of that organization that they're going to bring value.
Well, man, that we caught up from 40 years in this conversation, Egan, and I can't believe it. It's 40 years.
That crazy.
And we've picked up as if we've known each other all that time. So thanks very much for making it easy to have this conversation, for sharing so much wisdom with myself and my listeners. And hopefully this is just the beginning of staying in touch in this interconnected world we live in now. Please give my best to your entire family.
Thank you, Shaquille. It was a pleasure going through this. I look forward to listening to this podcast and all the other podcasts you have. I'd also like to say, please send my best to your family. And you guys always treated me with love and respect. You gave me an international tongue where I got all sorts of different foods that I had never tried before. And so I have very fond memories about my time with you and your family as well. So even though, as we said, it was just a short time that we were together, you will always be a longtime friend. And my love for you will never stop, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Really good. Really good. Happy to call you a brother.
Same here.
Take care. After recording that conversation a few weeks ago, I've been thinking a lot about why those 2 years when Egan and I were friends as kids stuck for me so much. And here's one of the things I've landed on. When we came to this country, my family and I, we lived in a town where, there was not a lot of ethnic kids. And I remember we had a neighbor, and I was really good friends with this little boy named Malcolm. And one day I went over to his house, and all the other kids in the neighborhood were over at his house. And it was his birthday party. And his mom saw me at the door and basically closed it in my face. I now reflect on that moment and realize how much it hurt. I didn't understand it at the time, but essentially it was because this woman, the mom of my good friend, was afraid of other cultures and other ethnicities. And this is 70s in Surrey, BC. So when I think about the time with Egan's family and how open and how welcoming, I used to sleep over at his house. I used to have dinner with his family, and he would do the same at my place. It was great because he basically erased that memory of being shut out of Malcolm's birthday party. So that's one thing I just reflected on. I thought I'd share with you. But now to the conversation that Egan and I had and some reflections. First of all, he talked about how he pivoted his career from construction to technology, and really relevant advice for people that are in face of dealing with career transitions or being made redundant in their past career now. His advice is just to lean in and learn, follow your passions. If you want to learn about new technologies and new ways of working in the future, the information's out there. Just embrace it and learn it, and there will be opportunities for you. He also shared with me his kind of trajectory of his career. And one of the things I've realized is that he succeeded in both construction and technology because of his soft skills. Of course, he needed the technical skills, but what differentiated him, I believe, is his focus on empathy, open communication, and curiosity. I loved his story about being the great explainer, being simple in communication. I love the 3 crayons analogy. And so that was a really important example to all of us. If you are making presentations to people, if you are presenting online, virtually, keep it simple. Make sure your visuals are clear and simple. Make sure your words are clear and simple. Makes it easier for your audience to engage. The other thing that resonated with me was his discussion about figuring out what success looks like for the person you are helping. That will allow you to be more relevant to them. If you can figure out how they measure success and you can come in and support them through that, it leads to a deeper connection. And it really reminded me of the theme of so many of my episodes. When things are hard for you, and if you want to build resilience, take your focus and your energy and put it on helping somebody else. Because when you help somebody else, it helps you focus not on yourself and your challenges and your problems, but on helping them. And the end result ends up being your own happiness and your own success. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, or share it. I want to say thank you to one of my favorite bands, Late Night Conversations, for sharing their song Chaos with me and letting me use it in this episode. You can learn more about them on Instagram at LNC Connected. And here's more of their song Chaos to take you out.
Far behind my eyes, mediation, suffocation, it'll break me. Information in disguise. But when your eyes finally found mine, you were there, but I'm defined by the chaos in my mind. I believe what I perceive is a weave tearing at the seams, and I wonder what's behind. And my ears are bleeding, and the reason isn't the logic of the season, taking the pleasing from my soul and leaving me to die. And I feel the lacing, LNC like racing, unstationary animation taking me from the purpose of my life.